Hey gang, Rodin here. Welcome on back to the Retrocade. It's Wednesday, and that means it's time for another edition of WTF Wednesday, where we take a dive back into the catalog to find games that on paper seem like a good idea, but in actuality, not so much. And for this week, we're going to set the Wayback Machine to 1992 and the Sega Genesis to play a game that had a lot of promise to it, but I think really illustrates the problem, one, importing computer games to consoles back 30 years ago, and two, also shows the fundamental flaw in most fighting games that exemplifies why games like Street Fighter 2 have lasted at the top of the heap for so long. We're going to play Best of the Best Championship Karate. Now, how this game works has got a lot going for it, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing. So the first thing you can do is you can alter your look using the B button, and you can change different faces that you have, obviously. I think there are 4 you can choose from, so I'll go with this one. And then what you can do is, the big appeal of this game was that you can choose the sort of attack you want to be able to put into your character. So what you do is that, as you see here, you see all these different moves that you can have for your fighter. And what you will end up doing, like, say I want to be able to choose a particular move, I have to program it into the D-pad. So it is a bit convoluted, but I can rotate this around so you can see a bit more, because you have different types of punches, you have different types of kicks, and what you want to be able to do is give your fighter as much of a range as possible for what they do. And as you see, as we're rotating around here, it will change up who can do what. So if I have A and I'm going like down, for example, I'll throw a body combination, whereas if I go A and 45 degrees down to the right, I'll throw a single body shot. Or if I go straight forward and hit A, I'll throw a right cross. So what you want to be able to do is be able to program in the hits that you want for your particular fighter. You can also choose what physical type they are, so you can boost them up in certain ways depending on how much money you have available. And then you have these options here where you can choose the type of the length of the rounds you have, the nationality of your fighter. You turn the music on or off. I'm going to turn it off. 1, it helps avoid a copyright strike, and 2, if I'm honest, the music in this game is fairly annoying, especially because you spend so much time on the load screen. And I will take a minute here and, whoops, change my name so I don't go by player 1. Let me put my actual name in here. And while I'm doing that, this game was developed in Europe, by Logiciel, which is a French software developer, and in the US it was developed by Electro Brain, which is a company that we have already got experience with on this channel because they developed Boxing Legends of the Ring, which we showed on Sports Saturday a couple of weeks ago. Now, you could argue this game could have very easily been a Sports Saturday entry as well, and it was something that I did contemplate. However, I think it works more in the context of being a WTF Wednesday title as opposed to anything else, just because it is one that has so much potential but then just did not manage to make itself work. So we'll go back to the menu, And what we'll do is we're just going to do a straight match. And we'll give you a chance to show you how this works. So it's a 1-minute round. I'm going to pause it really quick because I want to go over a couple things. So as you see, there's no life bar like there was in conventional games at the time. Remember, this came out in '92, so it actually was released a year after Street Fighter II made its entry into arcades. But if you look at the way the game is presented, you'll see that there are 4 really big lights on either side of the screen. Those actually represent your health bar. As you take punishment, those lights will go out one at a time, and then once they are completely out, you are at extreme risk for being knocked out. The 3 dots that are up near the names of both fighters are the number of times you can get knocked down and not have it ruled a TKO in a round. Or if you remember, a technical knockout is if you're knocked down 3 times in one round, the referee will stop the fight so you don't take any more unnecessary punishment. So then it's just a matter of being able to figure out the combinations by which your fighter can do damage. And the hitbox in this game is not very good, if I'm honest. So I do the sweep and knock him down. I don't get points for those knockdowns. It's more like a sweeps or more like a trip. It's got to be on something a bit harder to hit. And all I'm doing is I'm using different combinations of the D-pad and the A button to deliver the shots. Now, you may have noticed down in the lower right-hand corner there looked like an old-fashioned tape deck and a pause button. You can actually... One thing that was cool about this game is that you could record the fights, which for a 16-bit console was unheard of. Ooh, good body shot. Now, it is possible to knock a guy down without them being knocked out if you can hit him with the right blow. And it's called the flash knockdown. But as you can see, the hitbox is not very great because a lot of my punches are going past the opponent. So now it's the 3rd and final round. Ooh, nice back fist. Axe kick, that hurt. There we go. Trying to go for that high kick for a while. Ooh, got him with a good double back fist. But now my punches are going, or my kicks are going too wide. Oh, and I got knocked down. But I gotta hit the A button so I can get up. Ooh, and I got knocked down again.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Oh, and I think I've been knocked out. When I go flat out like that and my health bar goes down, I am not getting back up. And I have lost. So, and for that, it looks like I win a medical kit for my trouble. So let me see if I can actually get some better... There we go. So, as you scroll through, there's actually a lot more options that you have to create a move map for your fighter. So you can do things like straight kicks, you can do things like roundhouse kicks. You've got that lunging side kick down below, and it's the one that you pick when your pants turn red. That's the one you can choose from. So then you select it, and then you have to kind of map it in to see where you want to put it. So for like this lunging side kick, I'm going to put this one here. And then you will just keep on rotating through all 55 moves until you want to have your, what you think is going to be your best move set. And if you're not familiar with the style of this, back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, full contact karate was the precursor to MMA as we know it. It was guys who were fighting much more for points than for knockouts. It was not nearly as brutal. You couldn't do grappling. You couldn't do a lot of the things that are stalwarts of UFC and most MMA stuff that you find nowadays. You couldn't do in full contact karate. It was simply punches and kicks. You couldn't use the knees. You couldn't use the head. And you had guards on your feet and guards on your hands to keep from breaking them. And back at that time, 30, 40, 50 years ago, it was more popular because MMA had not developed in the way that it obviously did starting in, I would say, the mid to late 80s, rolling into the 90s, and obviously exploding in the 2000s. So let me see if I can find a couple better moves to use here. I like this back spin kick. And I like a low kick because I want something that's got some drive to it. So let's try that. We'll do this and we'll try it one more time. And instead of doing 3 rounds, we'll do 5 rounds this time. Now, in the reviews for this, a martial artist named Ron Yuan said in 1994 that he argued that this was actually the best pure technical martial arts game that you could find on the market. And yeah, you could say that, and I don't think I would be disinclined to argue with him that much. Ooh, good combination I landed right there. But part of the problem is that because this game was developed initially for PC and was ported onto both the SNES and the Genesis, that you were now limited by what the game offered and also what you could put together to make a fighter that could actually compete against the computer. So now we've actually turned ourselves around. So now we have to fight going the other way. Oh, there we go. A couple of good roundhouse kicks up top. Now, you can get away with a couple of attacks, but the computer is smart enough that it will start defending itself. Ooh, good axe kick. But for most kids, you have to think about it in the context of being 1991, 92. Okay? You go to a video game store, which were still fairly new back in that time, and you see this on a shelf, or you go to your local rental shop and you're looking to rent a game. Oh, there you go. And you see this on the shelf. Oh, got him with a good body shot and put him down.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Now you can pick it up and try it out. And maybe you get a little bit of fun out of it. But are you going to get the same sort of really kinetic action that you can get by instead taking that money, going to your local arcade, and playing Street Fighter 2
3, 4,
or other similar fighting games at the time. As I hit him with a spinning back fist, and down he goes, and he's out.
5, 6,
My theory on this is
10.
that part of the reason why this game did not do nearly as well as it could have was because the overall design of it is such that unless you really want to get into the minutia of creating a fighter that you think can get through the game, versus just going and grabbing Ken or Ryu or Blanca or Honda or Chun-Li or Guile or any of the characters that were already preset into Street Fighter 2 or any of the other really popular fighting games of the era and just playing that. You know, would you rather do that or really get into the nitty-gritty of it? And most people opted to go with just playing Street Fighter 2. Now, I think you could make the argument that for a game like this would actually teach you more about martial arts and fighting, per se, than Street Fighter 2, because Street Fighter 2 being more comic booky and more deliberately over the top, you know, you can't do a hurricane kick like Ken and Ryu do. You can't do the dragon punch like they do. You certainly can't conjure up a fireball without some very risky pyrotechnics. But this game, provided I can turn my guy around, can actually teach you the basics of alternating between punches and kicks, knowing that if you go downstairs to your opponent enough, you can do as much damage to their legs as if you try and go headhunting and simply try and take their head off with a kick that will leave you open to get hit yourself. Or also understanding that it's not necessarily about having the strongest punch, but also being able to, you know, stack your moves and set up your attack well enough that you learn to be more tactical about it. And that's not to suggest that there isn't a bit of strategy and tactics involved in Street Fighter 2. You know, you have to learn to understand pattern recognition and a lot of the things that that go into any sort of really good fighting game. So I don't want you to think I'm like damning Street Fighter 2 with faint praise or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying at all.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
But I also understand the appeal of a game like this versus a game like Street Fighter 2 or Mortal Kombat, which came out like a year or two later, or King of Fighters, which came out 2 years after this. You know, there's more flash and bang in a game like that than you get in this, where it is much more of a grind. It is more of a general thing of, you know, really teaching yourself how to be better as an all-around martial artist. And not everybody's going to go for that. You know, this is a game that I honestly, in all the years I've played it, I've never beaten it. And I don't know if there's a way to really beat it. There's no storyline to it. There's no overarching narrative or stuff like that. All you are is you are a fighter that you construct that goes into this ring and you fight this way. Now, one other thing that you can do is you can change the... As you can go by the rankings here, so you can see there's different fighters that you've got available and different trophies. What relevance they have, I don't really know. And you can also change the location of the fight, although I don't remember exactly where that is. Where you can do a, well, you can also do training. So this is something that's worth doing too, to show you how this works. So you can do sparring. And by doing this, as you see those percentages up top, if you do it well, you'll get a boost that you can take with you into your next couple of fights. So now I have to go and fight or do some heavy bag training, I think. And this one you have to guess which one you're doing. Oh, come on. There we go. Finally got one. And I didn't get any real benefit out of it. So now we will go ahead and fight LeBlanc. Now, there is also a pretty stiff difficulty curve in this game. That once you get about 3 or 4 fighters in, the degree of difficulty does spike up quite a bit. And as you can see, I'm already taking a lot more damage. I've got 13 seconds to go in the round, and now we're just getting messed up with each other. And I haven't really done much of a dent to him, but he's already taken down 2 of my health bars. That combination is nice if I can pull it off enough. And I was wrong. Those dots that are up top next to my name are the amount of special moves I have. So if you hit the B button, you can pull those off and do more damage. Ooh. That spinning back fist is brutal, and he puts me down. I got 10 seconds left in the round. Oh, and he knocks me out. With 1 second to go in the second round. And for that, I get another health kit. But in a nutshell, this is best of the best championship karate. And I think it's something that, for its time, it captured that era between the 60s when martial arts really exploded in the U.S. With the advent of Bruce Lee, and every town in every state in the country had at least one karate school or somebody who claimed that they knew martial arts, and a lot of them didn't. But it was that craze that really took over the country going into the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, when this style of combat came out. It was much more of a fringe sport because boxing was still the predominant combat sport in the world. But then by the time, again, we get to the early 90s and we see the rise of MMA, and then you get the UFC and K1 and all of that stuff. Kickboxing is still around, but it is much more niche. It is much more of an underground type thing. It doesn't have nearly the prominence it once did I'd say probably by the mid to late 80s at the best. Because by that point, everything changed. So now, really, this style of fighting is pretty antiquated. And as a result of that, a game like this wouldn't have nearly as much appeal. But also, again, I think it speaks to part of the problem of creating a good fighting game in that, yes, this game has nearly 60 moves that you can incorporate into your fighter, but they can only use a handful of them. And you've got to know which one is coded in. You've got to be able to figure out how to use them and when. And one of the things that I will always argue that Capcom got right, and they got it so right, was simplifying the way that you can have a fighting game with 3 buttons for punch, 3 buttons for kick, and a joystick. And then just figuring out in between those 6 buttons and the stick how to incorporate different moves that are interesting, that do damage, and that make you want to continue to play and also get better at the game. That became the template for every other fighting game that has followed in its wake since. And I don't know how much Capcom planned that, but it's one of those lightning strike moments that you're all the better for having, because now we've had 30 years of great games like that, which makes games like this seem far, far lesser than they were even at the time. So, again, I'm playing this on the Fusion 3.64 emulator for Genesis. I will say, if you want to try it out, again, it came out for the Genesis and the SNES. The Genesis version is better. It is easier to program. It's easier to execute. You don't have to do as much fiddling around with it as the Super NES version, and the graphics are better, I've found. And that was really the bread and butter for the Genesis anyway, was that the graphics had a bit more pop, the sound had a bit more pop to it as well, whereas Nintendo with the SNES wanted to give you better fluidity and give you better overall execution in terms of memory and things like that. So, you know, if you want to try it out, give it a go. I mean, and let me know your experience with it and what you think about it. But could they make a game like this nowadays? Sure, they absolutely could. Could they make it better than games that are currently out there right now? They'd have to do a whole lot of work on it to do so. And with what I've seen also in terms of how difficult it has been to create a good UFC or MMA game, and even WWE games have really, really suffered in the last 10, 15 years. I think we've hit a plateau where audiences are really wanting a quality game like that, and I'll be really interested to see what studio manages to put the formula together like Capcom did 30 years ago with Street Fighter 2. This wasn't it. So, but if you've enjoyed this, and I hope you have, best way to show it, you know the rules. Hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, ring the bell to be notified of the latest content. Also vote on our poll question. It's up on our community page. Do you want to see me finally take the dive into the From Software Soulsborne universe and take a crack at Dark Souls Remastered? Yes, it is not a retro game. I understand that, but we are now within sight of 200 episodes on this channel, and I'm thinking to commemorate that lofty plateau of doing something a little bit different, doing something a little fun, because it's a game that I have seen a lot. I've watched a million videos on it, but as I said, I've never played it. So cast your vote, yes or no, simple as that. And then once we get to 200, I'll make my decision at that time, and then we will figure out how, if you guys want me to see me do it, then we'll do it. If not, we'll move on to something else. So in the meantime, also be on the lookout for Sports Saturday and Sucker Punch Sunday coming up this weekend, where we play a classic sports and fighting platform-based game from the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th generation. Hope you enjoyed our one-day playthrough of Super Mario Bros. 2. That was a lot of fun to go back and revisit as well. Again, I do those every so often. They're a little bit more labor-intensive, and they're a little bit longer, but I will keep putting those out because, again, they're games that you can beat in an hour or less, so that's the whole idea. So in the meantime, my name is Ronan. It has been great to spend this time with you. Be safe, be well, happy gaming, and we will talk to you this weekend for Sports Saturday. Bye.